credit linked notes, that is CLN. CLN is a privately placed fund-based instrument. It is in the form of a security receipt. It has embedded credit default swap features also. CLN is on balance sheet equivalent of credit default swap. That is, CLN is fund based, whereas credit default swap, that is CDS, is a non-fund based. How the operation of CLN takes place? So we have a bond owner who purchases a bond from the bond issuer by paying cash to him, and in return gets bond from the bond issuer. Now this bond, it becomes a reference asset, and this reference asset carries credit default risk and credit deterioration risk also. In such circumstances, the bond owner, he can transfer the default risk or credit deterioration risk by obtaining protection from protection seller by using credit default swap. In that process, the bond owner becomes protection buyer also. So he buys protection from protection seller by way of credit default swap. Now this protection seller, who is CLN issuer or CLN seller also, primarily is an investment bank, also known as special purpose vehicle. So this entity issues CLN, credit linked note, as a marketable security. And this marketable security, that is CLN, it is purchased by the CLN investors. And the reference asset is used as an underlying to issue this security. The maturity period of CLN and principal of CLN is almost matching to the reference asset. Now CLN investor, he gets a security receipt from CDS issuer or CLN seller, and in turn he makes payment of cash upfront to the CLN issuer according to terms of the issue. CLN issuer, he is making regular payment of coupon amount to CLN investors till maturity. If there is no default, then on maturity, the CLN issuer returns the face value received in cash back to the CLN investor. So the face value which CDS protection seller, CS or CLN seller had received from CLN investors, it will be returned back if there is no default. In that way, we can understand that CLN transaction is a fund-based transaction, whereas the CDS transaction is a non-fund based transaction. If there is default or credit risk relating to the reference asset, in that case, the CDS protection which this bond owner had obtained from protection seller, it is triggered. In that case, the CLN seller or the protection seller, he will pay the value of the reference asset to the bond owner to discharge his CDS obligation. And in case he makes payment of cash for the reference asset which he had got from CLN investors, in that case, what will he pay to the CLN investors? Once the bond owners receive face value of the reference asset, so they will deliver the reference asset, that is the bond, to the CLN seller. And CLN seller in return will deliver this bond to the CLN investor. Ultimately, the CLN investors, what do they get in case of default? Say, though they get the physical possession of that bond, on the basis of which they can recover whatever money they can recover. It means in case of default, the risk will be borne by the CLN investors. Now, what type of risk the CLN investor faces on this transaction? There are two types of risk. One of them is called default risk or credit risk relating to the reference asset which we have just talked. If there is default on the reference asset, that risk will be borne by the CLN investors. Secondly, even if there is no reference asset, it may also happen that CLN seller is unable to return the face value back to the CLN investors. So CLN investors, they carry the counterparty risk also. Now, what are the advantages of CLN? First advantage is the CLN allows risk distribution to a large number of investors. So this risk being borne by bond owner only, this can be transferred to a large number of investors. Second, CLN investors, they get an additional avenue of investment. And third, the bond owner gets protection under credit default swap against credit default risk and credit deterioration risk. And CLN seller, as protection seller, receives premium from bond owner, that is protection buyer. So this transaction is advantageous for all these people. Thank you friends for watching this video. I hope you benefited from the video. Thank you once again.